thank you for watching the John Doe Prepper channel. I am your host, John A. Whitman, and today's video is a little bit of a departure from what I normally do on this channel. This is a cooking video, but what exactly we will be cooking, I will leave as a surprise for a little bit later in the video. So, without any further ado, let's quickly head out into the garden so I can show you what Justy got ready to harvest. And then we will come right back here into the kitchen, and then I will finally tell you what exactly it is that I will be cooking today. All right, so here is my beet harvest. You can see these two are just about the perfect size. The first two I pulled, unfortunately, were not quite ready. So this one is, of course, nowhere near ready. This one is usable, but it's not as big as it could have been. So after I took a closer look and realized these two were ready and the rest were not, I left all the others to their devices. And there's this one right here in the middle that I forgot to thin out, which will now actually, now that I pulled that big one right out of the middle, will actually have room to grow. So I have these three that are still growing that I will continue to water and leave to their own devices. But we'll probably only need one of these bigger ones for this particular cooking project, after which the rest of these and the rest of these, once they're done growing, will be used for something else that I will also be showing here on the channel. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be really cool. But now that I've shown you that, I am going to wash or rinse these off real quick, and then we will head back into the kitchen. Looks good to me. So for those of you who may be just a little tiny bit autistic, like yours truly, you may have probably guessed what exactly I will be making today. It is a dish that originated in Eastern Europe, and depending on where exactly in the Slavic world you are, it goes by many different, albeit very similar, names. So whether you call it Borsch, Borsch, or Barsch, today we will be making the classic red beetroot soup. So without any further ado, let's hop straight into the cooking process so that if you so desire, you can follow along at home. But before we get into that, here's the things that you're actually going to need for this recipe. You will need one medium-sized red beetroot, one carrot, also known as the night vision alternative stick, two potatoes, in this case I'm going with russet potatoes, two small onions, or because they did not have smaller sized onions at my local grocery store, I'm going with one large onion, in this case a white onion, 1/2 of a head of cabbage, some type of fatty meat, preferably pork. That was what was used traditionally. In my case, the best thing I could find that sort of approximated what you typically see in Borsch is this side pork. You can see there's lots of fat on there. Very nice. Then you will need 1 or 2 bay leaves and 1 or 2 cloves of garlic, but in my case, because I didn't feel like buying a whole bulb of garlic just to use like 1/3 of it, I'm just going to be using minced garlic in the proper amounts to simulate having 2 minced cloves of garlic. You'll also, of course, need a little bit of salt to add to the soup as it cooks. But without any further ado, let's jump right into the actual making of this dish. All right, ladies and germs, here comes by far the most exciting part of this recipe, where we pour water into a pot full of pork and then sit around waiting for it to boil for 30 years. But in all seriousness, you basically are doing this to add a little bit of extra flavor to the soup with the water. The meat itself will also be going into the soup, of course, But the reason we boil it first is so then we can strain out all that juicy pork water and add that to the soup as well. So I am gonna put this on high and flex my really cool kitchen with this little discreet fan, because that's what YouTube is about, right? Flexing all the cool stuff you have. Anyway, you put the fan on to kind of medium-ish, and I am going to get this up to a boil and literally let it sit here and boil for an hour to an hour and a half. That's why I say this is by far the most time-consuming part of this recipe. So I will get back to you when this is actually up to a boil, and then I will get back to you again once that hour to hour and a half is done. Through the magic of video editing, this will be like 2 seconds for you and forever for me. So consider yourselves lucky. So while we are sitting around waiting for the pork to boil, I will get to washing the vegetables that I have not actually washed yet. So I already obviously washed the beets. You already saw me do that. Off camera, I washed my head of cabbage. Sheesh, I'm doing great today with my pronunciation. Cabbage. So the only other things I need to wash are my night vision alternative and my vegetable starch depositories. So because I'm a weirdo, we're going to do another cool time lapse where you get to watch me wash vegetables, because of course that's what you guys are here for, this super entertaining content. But without any further ado, ADD time lapse! And now we are finally on to the actual preparation of the vegetables. That is to say, chopping them up into little pieces so that they will be able to boil through much more easily. And the first part of this process is by far the most dangerous part of this recipe. This operation can expose you to deadly fumes which can stop you from breathing and possibly even blind you with tears. This is extremely dangerous, so do not try this at home unless you know what you're doing. And of course, feel free to seek the assistance of personal protective equipment, like so. There we go. Now we are finally ready to embark on our dangerous quest to cut the onion. Dun dun dun. So for this part of the video, I figured I would at least partially not do this as a time lapse, so I can maybe actually kind of show you guys how to cut an onion, or at least how I cut an onion kind of poorly. So obviously for this part of the cooking process, we have switched to an entirely new cutting board and knife so that we are not potentially cross-contaminating our vegetables with bacteria from the meat. So now that we're properly kitted up, we're going to start with this piece of hazardous material right here. The compostable, put that right over there. So with an onion, you do not have to wash it before you cut it, because obviously you're just going to get rid of the skin. Anyway, hopefully you guys can hear me well through this respirator. It does have a voice diaphragm, which is supposed to make it easier to hear and understand people. So I'm going to start by cutting off the top like so. Peels off some of the skin as it goes. And then I'm gonna cut a little off the bottom as well. Again, it peels up that little piece of skin as it goes. And then I can get underneath that skin. That's basically like paper. And you can just start peeling it off. Like so. Obviously, you do want to make sure you have removed all of the skin You want this to feel nice and smooth and not papery. So then we take all this, we can just throw it out, in my case, into the compost, which I will have to take out after this because onions stink. So from here, an onion has rings, kind of like a tree. So you can take advantage of that to make dicing the onion a little bit easier. However, that being said, for this soup, we don't want to finely dice the onion. So that makes my job a lot easier. I get to just kind of hack this into sort of bite-sized pieces that will then be fried and then boiled like so. So I'm just going to cut this onion, going to keep this nice and simple, cut it into quarters like that, and then cut those quarters into eighths. Like that. And then because of those layers, you can see it just comes apart into little pieces like so. Once I get to here, where they're kind of a little bit big again, I will cut that eighth, the last of that eighth, into a 16th. And then we get pieces that are all of roughly similar size that way. Here's a big piece, cut that in half. And there you go. There's a very quick and dirty way to chop up an onion specifically for soup like this. I could cut it up even smaller, and I may very well still do that. But that is the basic gist of it. So at this point, this is probably getting a little bit boring. So I will finish the rest of this off camera, and then we will get on to the beet and the carrot, and then finally the potatoes and this big mamma jamma. This is going to be fun. I have a surprise tool that will help me later. Also, real quick, before I continue the time lapse, this is probably as good a time as any to point out that you should be careful whenever you're handling knives and other sharp objects in the kitchen as well as pretty much everywhere else. Especially if you are a minor. Please do not hurt yourself doing this in the kitchen and then tell your parents that you got the idea from this video. I do not want to be sued by your parents. And now we have reached a very interesting part of the video. The part where I have to try and cut this absolute behemoth in half. But I don't have any knives big enough in my kitchen to do that. And if you have a similar conundrum in your kitchen as well, feel free to seek assistance from tools that are not typically found in your traditional kitchen cabinet. Yeah. This is gonna be fun. And that, ladies and germs, is what a nice sharp Bowie knife can do. So for this soup, we only need 1/2 of the cabbage head, so this half gets to go back in the fridge for, I don't know, making salad or something. I'll figure something out. Anyway, this guy needs to get chopped up into all sorts of nice little bitty pieces. So we're gonna do that. Right, quick boil, that on high. Whip out the strainer. And I'm just gonna strain the pork water directly into the soup pot. Like so. That was easy. So I will now dice up these pieces of pork very carefully because they are still quite hot, and throw those in as well. But in the meantime, kind of make sure they're not going to drip all over. In the meantime, in goes these here beets and the spuds. Try not to splash water all over myself. Let's see if I can. Got a little bit on me, but I don't think I got any all over the stove top, which is the important thing. With that, we will now wait for this to get up to boil, and then we will add all of the rest of the ingredients in a certain particular order, which I will, of course, show you. This is where things start coming together and actually kind of looking like soup. So we are in the home stretch. Alright, the soup is boiling. I will add the meat. Like so. Now, we need to fry the onions and carrot. Alright, this is where things get a little bit louder in the kitchen. I have turned the fan on a little bit higher because it is obviously, as you can see, boiling quite vigorously. And we are now going to start frying the onions and the carrots. Alright, the onions and carrots are just about done. The onions have started becoming slightly translucent and have even started to brown a little bit, which is exactly what we want. So, they go straight out of the frying pan. I'm doing great with pronunciations today. That's the second one in the whole video. But it goes straight from the frying pan into the soup, like so. Do it nice and slow and gentle so you don't splash boiling water all over yourself and other things that you do not want to be scalded. I will also add some salt. Now you could, of course, do this like a normal person, since this is, of course, a salt shaker, but me being the cultured sophisticate that I am, I know that if you want to enhance the flavor of your culinary creations tenfold, you of course have to do the salt. Like this. Now at this point some of you might be wondering, well, don't you have to stir this every so often? To which I say, not really. But if you were going to do so, what implement would you use? Well, to answer that question, we have to honor the Slavic heritage of this dish and use wooden spoon, блядь. What? Your mother never teach you how to stir soup. You use wooden spoon like real men. We are not babies here. You use wooden spoon to stir soup, блядь. Do not be pussy and use plastic. Американский шпион, capitalist crap. Plastic give you ass cancer. Do not use. Use wood like real true Slav men that you are.
Я солдат. Я не спал 5 лет, и у меня под глазами мешки. Я сам не видел, но мне так сказали. Я солдат. И у меня нет башки, мне отбили ее сапогами. Йо-йо-йо, комбата.
Alright, one last quick thing here because I'm an idiot and forget things sometimes. I forgot to add my minced garlic, and as Life of Borsch says, or maybe two. Now, finally, after all this, we just let this sit until she's done. Well, it appears by my reckoning that the soup is done. The beets and potatoes are both nice and tender and pass the fork test with flying colors. As you can see, unfortunately, the beets were not quite able to get this soup to that lovely deep red texture, or not texture, I mean color, that Borsch is kind of famous for. But we did get this kind of interesting, kind of golden color, so this is golden Borsch. Now, of course, there are plenty of varieties of Borsch that do not actually use beets in them, so there are non-red versions of the soup. But this particular one was supposed to be red. Not sure what happened here. It could be just as simple as I didn't add enough beets because the ones I had were a bit small. But of course, just because we didn't quite get the color we want does not make this any less Borsch. So now that it's done, I'll let it cool down a little bit, and then we will actually try it. Not sure how I'm gonna do that on camera without doing a face reveal, but I'll figure something out.
А ну, чики-брики в танке! Алло, is Bandit John here to do semi-successful Borsch experiment test review. Behold, I am in my super secret bunker in Chernobyl exclusion zone. And I am going to sample this delicious beetroot vegetable soup we call Borsch, блять.
Okay, actually, that's getting a little cringe. Anyway, there is the soup in question. You can see the beetroots, probably right there, the little red thing. As you can see, I have garnished it with some sour cream and some fresh dill, as is often done with this particular dish. And as you can see, my solution to doing a taste test on camera without doing a face reveal is to wear this ski mask and eat soup in probably the most cursed freaking way possible. And so I figured, why not just go all the way with it and cosplay as an unemployed Russian apartment dweller still living with his grandparents. So here we are. But anyway, here is the Borsch, nice and warm. I am going to try and get a little bit of everything. So I'm gonna move the camera a bit closer. There we go. So I'm gonna get, there's a piece of beetroot. I'll grab a little bit of the sour cream with that, and then in the next bite I see some potato, carrot, and pork right there. I will try to get those next, but let's see if beets are still as good as I remember them being as a kid, and hopefully I don't get a whole bunch of stains on this ski mask. Let's go. Not bad. Not bad at all.
Obviously kind of earthy, but it does have a little touch of sweetness to it. It's very tender, which I was kind of worried that it might not be. That is not bad at all. Obviously, beets do have kind of a unique flavor. You can see, though, kind of looking at it now, I don't know if this will show up well on camera, but at least to my eye, it went from that gold color you saw earlier to, yeah, you can kind of see that on camera. It's kind of more of a pink now. So the beet pigmentation did actually partially work. Now, let me grab, okay, there's potato, cabbage, a little piece of pork. And get that all in one go here. Yes, I can, and I'll get a little bit more of that sour cream. You can see what I got here. A little bit of everything. Let's try, we tried the beetroot, now let's try literally everything else. Down the hatch. Okay, what I thought was potato was actually just a giant chunk of pork fat, which was quite delicious, but not what I'm looking for as far as trying to sample a little bit of everything. Now this is potato, at least I think. Actually, that might be more pork. It's kind of hard to tell. But, yeah, that was more pork. Where is potato, блядь? Ah, there we go. There's a little bit of potato and another chunk of beetroot. But yeah, so far this tastes pretty good, honestly. Now that we've kind of, we finished the dish, we've tasted the dish, or by we, I mean I, you living vicariously through me in a YouTube video, but this is kind of the end of the video, I suppose. I kind of have nothing more to talk about. Thank you all for watching this video. I appreciate your viewership. If you liked the video, consider leaving a like and a comment for the YouTube algorithm that desires your flesh and your soul as a viewer of this platform. Consider checking out the link to the Discord server. And also, one last thing before I sign off for the evening.
John A. Whitman mouth reveal. Okay, but in all seriousness though, thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. If you feel inspired by this video, feel free to rewatch it and follow along with my recipe, and you may end up with something delicious and nutritious like this. And with all that being said, this is Crazy Jonathan Yon Avitman signing off. Until the next video, I will try to get out a whole bunch of videos this week to make up for me not uploading anything for like 3 weeks. So, sorry about that, and stay tuned for more videos this week, and hopefully I will not forget to post at least one video per week from now on. Peace! Пока-пока!